Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with our first Grand Finalist, the reigning World Champion, the Terran from Team Liquid, the Frenchman in the red. It's Clem, facing off against the current GSL champion, the Protoss in the blue. We have Classic in a best-of-7 Terran versus Protoss Grand Finals to the very first season of the RSL, the Revival Starleague Season 1, where for almost a month, players have battled it out for a chance to be here. But it's boiled down to these two titans. So before we get started, it'd be awesome if you could smash that like button and maybe even subscribe. Help me count the algorithm. And Jimmy, what are we? Jimmy. 1,671 likes on this video, on this cast, and I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways because I don't know what else I'd do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better as Clem sends across the first Reaper, 2 gas behind, some aggressive intentions, but I'm not the least bit surprised. From the player who is arguably the best Protoss versus Terran in the entire world, present company notwithstanding. Well, we'll see by the end. Clem knows exactly when that first Adept could be a threat, and the Reaper just slides away and maybe says a few angry words at it. The Adept, of course, without a mouth, cannot respond. But already some shield batteries. The probe was sent across right off the bat to keep tabs on things. Classic very, very aware of Clem's potential here. In Classic, one of our rare shield Protoss. Not a YOLO toss who bases most of their strategies on vibes like Hero or SOS, and I don't see either of them here. But instead, a calm and calculated player who, I think with the newest patch, some months old now, but with energy recharge, and generally the changes across the board, that more pragmatic, later game Protoss style has clearly had some success, with Classic picking up victories even over Serral lately, so, and obviously the GSL. So Classic has kind of rocketed up the ranks, and despite being a full 10 years older than Clem, it seems he's putting that experience to good use. We'll see, though. Facing off against Clem's level of aggression is something, well, obviously, not many players can withstand. There's a reason he's the world champion. There's a reason he's here right now. The first Widowmine drop is loaded up behind it. Double tech lab back at home. Setting up already the anti-blink stalker bulwark. Not to keep the stalkers out entirely, just to keep them in a spot where, well, they're really not going to want to be. Clem was one of the first players, if not the first, to really work it out after almost infinite games against max packs. Well, enough about that. While the first Widowmine drops come in, tucks it into the corner. A little bit of Prairie Dog micro here for the mines to maximize the mining time lost. Fires off a shot, takes out one, but Blink is only halfway done, and Clem has only begun the fun. As right now, the Widowmines will slip in and still have their day in the sun. Well, Hallucinated Phoenix. He starts Interference Matrix. Just trying to fake out Cloak, maybe. I'm not sure he spotted the Raven with the Hallucinated Phoenix, but Clem able to get a little bit of damage, and the fact that that Widowmine drop is still back there is anchoring so much of it. Well, it anchors several Stalkers back at home. There's a Templar Archives on the way on 2 base. Classic kind of meeting Clem where he is. That early aggression. Ooh, the Raven hanging out with the Moopies back there. Clearly not a reference to anything in particular. No other star sort of anythings, but Blink nearly complete. Bounces the Stalkers away. But that very quick Templar Archives is certainly a threat. Classic, a big proponent of the early spell casting in both Protoss versus Zerg and Terran, bringing the storm so early. He knows about the healing shrine. Okay, thank you. As a geographical enthusiast myself, it always infuriates me. It's one of my many pet peeves. You can check out my manifesto on Patreon. Of players not using any of the critical new map features. Yes, it's pretty milquetoast in the grand scheme of things, but compared to some of the changes we've made in the past, having a healing shrine is a massive shift in the meta. Yes, you can't put air units. Yes, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And yes, it's only that spot and you have to stand there. But still. Meanwhile, though, the Warp Prism, strong gust of wind might take it out, but Is there a Viking on the way? No. He's forced to recall, but he does get it out. Most importantly, that close to going down entirely, but Clem not quite able to take it out, and he gets the medevac back home. So, both players able to extract those early transports from deep behind enemy lines. But, well, who does this favor? Classic is going to have Storm completed. It will be fully operational by the time any sort of Terran army arrives. And Charge is also on the way. The triple threat is coming together. Stim, Combat Shield, +1 attack for Clem. All the fixins for your basic bio force. But storms could rip right through them. A hurricane of destruction is more than enough. And Clem just loads up into the medevacs. He's going to try to drop the base, and Classic should be able to see it. There's an observer on the way, obviously anticipating exactly this by the fact there weren't medevacs at the front. He loses one. Oh, no. Already the damage is done. The Widowmines will burrow 2 medevacs down. Classic anticipating. He sent the probe across. There were no medevacs at the front. So clearly, they were somewhere. Oh, energy recharge. Whips out a storm. Throws out a feedback. 0 out of 5. Would murder again. Meanwhile, the main army is getting caught. Blank Stalkers on top of everything. Tank will... And Clem just taps out. Classic slaps down the medevacs. Cuts off the army. Has 3 bases running. The supply's a bit dangerously close, but the fact that Classic has Charge as well as Storm and the ability to just warp in around the units, I think it does make sense, if maybe a little on the early side for Clem to tap things out. But a decisive victory for Classic in Game 1. Feel a little bit of that is Clem taking the big risk of going for the triple drop. And he had the Raven with it, but he didn't scout for the Observer before. He telegraphed it like it was 1874, and Classic is able to shut it down just as easily. So we go into game number 2, Classic, with a decisive game 1. Even though Clem able to make a little bit of progress, we're on Kill Switch, one of our community maps, and Classic is making some weird moves with that. I did say Classic is one of our more standard, like, pragmatic macro toss. I don't know if standard is the right word, but I guess that's what we default to, is macro. But you don't get to this level of StarCraft 2, especially as Protoss, without having another card to play. And here we are. Proxy 2? Wow. A build straight out of 2010. Well, really 1998, before Clem was born. But Proxy 2-gate Protoss. On the charcuterie board of Protoss cheeses, this is certainly one of the sharpest ones. Not that they would know the difference, but I'm assuming that any sort of worker on a normal pathing would actually go a different direction. But Clem is not scouting. The typical greedy Terran. Gonna rely on the Reaper to scout early in Classic. I don't know if he would have done this if he won game 1 or not, but I like the choice. Putting this out there early in the series. It works, it doesn't matter. Now you put the fear of Protoss and their barcode ladder builds in the heart of the Terran. And Clem will have to respect it either way. And right now, it's going to be a significant amount of respect. As there's a Cyber Core in production, it doesn't end with the Zealots. This isn't the Silver Lake. All right. If there's no bunker by the time the Stalkers come up, that could spell absolute, potentially game... Oh my god, he's making a reactor. It's a disaster. Clem, is he gonna see it? The mini-map! What are those? Sound the alarm! The Zealots are already on the way. The panic button is pressed. A bunker is in production. He canceled the reactor. But 2 Zealots. The Reaper seeing it gives him that tiny bit of warning. But it's almost nothing in the grand scheme of things. The Zealots are already chopping at the door, trying to contemplate what exactly this entire concept is, because the Protoss lost the technology so many years ago, if they ever had it. But the supply depot being broken down by the Zealots, the damage is just not enough. The SCVs being picked off, the bunker is completed. A Widowmine will burrow. and will not lock on in time. The Stalkers are inside the main. Stalking as aggressively as possible, trying to pick things off. One of the Stalkers going to go down, but picks off a Marine. Reaper and Marine still chasing. SCV citizens arrest on the Zealot, but the Stalker still moving its way around. The bunker repositioned. Stalker, half the SCVs on the map are chasing that Stalker around and are surprisingly effective at it. Adept shades by. Widowmine unable to fire. Adept will get involved in the main base and chases down the Reaper, assassinates it immediately. Another Marine picked off. That Stalker finally taken out. But now here comes the Adept target fire on the Marine. More SCVs pulled off the line. Hellion finally comes out, trying to put out these fires with some of his own. And Clem, well, he's held. But we gotta ask ourselves that eternal caster question. Have you liked and subscribed? And at what cost? The high ground vision with the shade, just enough of it in order to help pick off the supply depot potentially. And Clem is in an awkward spot. Classic took a Nexus behind. He's already got 2 bases done. Clem does not have a second command center. This is an increasing disaster. He dropped supply, which will actually refinish that depot and give it another 100 HP. One of the quirks from the newest patch is supply drop now heals the depot, though very rarely do we see it in action. In a literal sense, as usually it's like something you do when you get supply blocked as opposed to the repair. But the Widowmine, just gonna sacrifice the Adept. Is almost dead anyways, but on the other side of the map, Hellions will dart in. He took whatever he could, and he sent it across the map. But the shield batteries are already online, and 2 Hellions aren't enough to burn through them. Classic, with the great defense after the well-executed offense. And now, the slow zones in the center of the map making it awkward for everyone involved, trying to target down the medevac. The Hellions are fighting the Stalker, gets to the high ground, breaks vision for a moment. Here comes a Cyclone, turns it around again. But high ground, Classic, not going to be able to see any of these units easily. And Clem might be able to, well, he's trying to force a fight at the gateway. With the Cyclone to lock on to things, Classic is in an awkward position. He just started Blink. But Clem is only now adding a second command center. He's down 15 workers. In fact, Classic needs to stop building probes before he has a problem. If he invests too much in economy, that is the only chance that Clem has to come back from here. He's far behind economically. He's going to take a command center. But both players know he needs to get damage done with this army. Cloak is on the way for Banshees. Classic has pulled back from the full cheese into a much more standard looking. Now, if you didn't show the timer, this would look almost like a standard game now. Classic researching Blink, getting a robo, adding some gates, while Clem expands, and it's a bit odd to go for the... Wait, what happens if you take down these rock towers? Does that destroy the slow zones? I don't know, he just... The aggressive archaeologist, Classic, making sure all those rocks are actually real and not hallucinated. To which I say, I'll have what he's having. But small Widowmine drop. Well, just regular sized, but 1 Widowmine drop. To be a little pedantic. There's a mineral wall towards Classic actually taking the 3rd base to the north side. The slow zones and the mineral walls in the main will make things a little more complicated. Drops in, burrows the mine. Classic, good reaction time. Maybe he'll sacrifice one on the altar. Comes back around. Clem retargeting. Ends up getting a couple kills. Which is something. But the Blink Stalkers will hunt down the medevac and, well, Clem reacts in time to save it. But you can't recall it. So... Clem, he's got the supply, he has the army, he has Cloak Banshees on the way. Even if they're observers, getting your units in position to deal with it in time is not always a guarantee. And the observer, there are 2 of them. Where's the second one? It's sitting in the main. So very likely these Banshees will get some kills. The bulwark in the main base. Blink Stalkers, Banshees headed in. Damage going to be dealt on both sides, but who will handle it better? The Banshees just ripping through the mineral line. The target fire is required, so the shield battery doesn't help. 8, 9 kills and counting. Observer coming down, but already double-digit kills. Banshee taking out a few stalkers on the low ground. A hectic game. More damage gonna be done. The Observer's there, but he just doesn't have enough stalkers to deal with it. Clem is tearing through the mineral line. The Banshees with 20 kills. Oh my. Terrible, terrible economic damage. And Classic is actually behind in workers. And the Banshees lived. Wow. Well, for now. Might be intercepted by the retreating stalkers. But Clem with the late cloak Banshees. It's not about how long it takes you to get there. It's about how you use them. Eventually, though, we'll be surrounded and persecuted by the stalkers with extreme prejudice. There are 5 siege tanks moving across the map right now. Classic needs to do whatever he can to delay this push. He still has 3 Nexi. He's taken the worker lead yet again, which is not a huge deal against someone who has mules, but oh no, the Blinken! He snipes off 2 tanks! Might be able to save another. The medevac! Well, Classic, huge pickoffs, though Clem was able to mitigate some of the disastrous damage. Not having a medevac with this push is dicey indeed. 1 siege tank on the high ground, but the SCV's under fire. What a game. Recalls all the way back. Clem sieges up by the time the recall's available. But charge is completed. That's a huge deal. Blake's forward. Targets 1 tank. Going for a second. Banshee not enough to deal with this. Without the medevac, he doesn't have stim. He doesn't have combat shield. All he has is cloak for the Banshee. And now he has no Banshees at all. Well, I really thought that was going to be true. Okay, it sounded real dramatic. The Banshee escapes, but at what cost? It might as well be dead already. Now I'm just editorializing, but that's why we're here, right? Storm is on the way as Clem. A single Marine, I think not even part of the army, just was being rallied out. Classic manages to dismantle that deadly Terran push and comes out ahead yet again. A topsy-turvy roller coaster of a game. But I think it's Clem who wants off the wild ride right now. Storm is halfway done. Again. The watchtower opened up with a single gulp of minerals. The Banshee that has a ankle monitor there with the observer. And Clem, again, we're kind of going back into an almost typical looking. You cover up the timer and Storm on the way alongside Stim, Combat Shield, and +1. But there's been so much more happening in this game. What an exchange. I do think Classic has the overall advantage, but Clem is Clem. Hashtag deep. Thing is, he has no easy tools to deal with Storm. He has no Ghosts, no Liberators. Does he even have any Vikings? No. So there's nothing that can just take out the Prism. And oh, the Storm! Cataclysmic! Category 5 right off the bat. Just annihilates. There's no way that number's true. That was like 8 Marines, at least. More Storms on the mineral line. Clem forced to retreat back to his natural. 20 SCVs dead! Hurricane season is in. And Classic is not done yet. Clem has to go. He's down 30 workers. The charge lots. There's not quite enough energy. The water balloon's coming out. The fight gets eviscerated in the middle of the map, and Classic manages to thread that game into a victory. It was a back and forth. It looked like he may have overextended time and time again. But he just let Clem put his neck out, and he was the Frenchman getting guillotined. Classic 2-0. And it doesn't feel like yeah, it was a 2-game. But Classic just taking the initiative and crushing Clem. Clem playing right into his hand. Wow. An impressive couple of games, but how many more cards does Classic have to play? Thing is, game 1 was just stock standard. Clem got completely shut down and knocked out. Game 2, Classic tries the, successfully executes the 2-gate. Now we're on Maganatha, one of the longest rush distances, and just amount of bases all over the map. Reaper walling. Will Clem SCV scout now? I feel like, well, I'm of the opinion you should be SCV scouting every game. All right, but that means my build will be 7 seconds late, which does matter. All right, that sending out an SCV is a non-zero percentage of your economy early. But can you put a price on safety and security? No, but you can put a price on liking and subscribing. Absolutely free. Probe scouted around looking for proxy racks. Clem does not send an SCV, but Classic is going for the 1 gate expo. Probe just gonna leave its mark for a moment. Wouldn't be surprised if he tries to get a single hit on these SCVs. Oh, looks like he's softening it up for the Adept. So, an Adept kills both Marines and SCVs in 2 hits and 1 more damage. Yes, it was specifically calculated for that. So that means if you get a nice little electrical lick by the probe, which I will never say that again. Okay, I won't guarantee that, but we'll hope so. Then it puts you in 2-shot range. So sometimes it's not just a show of dominance, but instead an actual strategy to just take a taste of as many SCVs as possible in order to soften them up, potentially for Adepts and occasionally Oracles, which actually have the same damage profile. Though Stargate is a rarity, simply because I put Stargate as high risk, medium reward. It can be very effective as part of a strategical makeup, as in like one of those builds you do in a longer series to catch your opponent off guard. But all Stargate units are so fragile, and if any of them get taken out early, you're so far behind. Not nearly as bad as... it's much worse than if you lose, say, a Stalker to a few Marines and a Hellion, just hypothetically. Oh man, picks off one, but if he does, there's another Stalker coming up. The exchanges continue until morale improves. And then Terran morale has always been low. 2 Stalkers now. All right, the commentary, just excruciatingly detailed. Marines, Widowmine scampers up. Stalker, 1 hit. The Hellion going for it. Needs a repair. Take it out. It's a trade, but I think that one favors the Terran. Stalker for a Hellion is not a bad trade to make. Blink is on the way. Medevac in production. Classic. Looking for exactly this, and he spots it. Just putting some damage on the medevac. The Marines, it's raining men. Hallelujah. Down goes the Stalker, but getting any damage on the medevac makes it that much easier. Oh my, Stalker is stalking, as it does. And a couple more Stalkers. The patrol team might be able to actually just take out the medevac. The other Stalker coming back around, he's gonna get it. Wow, Classic, just dismantling. And he brought, that wasn't for scouting, he brought the probe in order to, as the sacrifice for the Widowmine. Wow, Classic. Classic is outplaying Clem right now. I don't, there's no sugarcoating it there. Classic anticipating and dismantling Clem's strategies across the board. All games so far. I didn't come into this expecting Classic, I thought Classic may get some of those late games where all Terrans struggle. But, the early game is Clem's wheelhouse, right? Where the less units there are on the field, the better it is for Clem, because he plays the game effectively like a MOBA for each unit. But no, Classic has been dominating the early, mid, and the closest we've gotten to late game, so we're gonna have to calibrate our enthusiasm here for... Actually, now, I don't know how to feel, all right? It's great to see kind of a new brand of Protoss. But Clem, still plenty of opportunity. It's not like he's way behind. Losing that medevac is painful, but it isn't game-ending. And now the army's coming across. Classic did invest a lot in the Stalkers early, and he didn't actually do any economic damage. So he's very reliant on these Blink Stalkers to get anything done against the siege tanks, which... Another volley. Meanwhile, in the main base, Liberator siege is up, and Classic's setup here actually makes it complicated for the Stalkers to deal with it. Picks off a few probes while moving forward with the siege tank push. There's no charge. It's still far off. Clem. Now this is a dangerous attack. Liberator will be taken out, but that's more units that are not in position to deal with this. 3 siege tanks. Charge will not be done by the time this attack is concluded, more than likely. And the Immortal goes forward, just waltzes in. Gonna eat the big siege tank hits, but the Stalkers consolidate, take out a couple tanks. The Zealots scans for the high ground vision, but plugs forward and takes up... Classic. He turns what is a potentially devastating siege tank push, and he just... The Surgeon. He just pulls it apart. I really felt like that would be a lot harder to deal with. But that single Immortal, not living up to its name, but literally just wades in. The confidence as well. It wasn't an accidental move. He said, I'm sending the Immortal. It'll draw fire. Everything else will pick off the rest. He traded that one Immortal to take out the whole push. And that was a good trade. That is not something players make quickly, usually. You don't want... Usually robo units. So, you only have one robo to start. Economic concerns. So, choosing to sacrifice your robo units is a very questionable decision. Okay, you have to think several times before you do so, because that robo time is precious. Observers, warp prisms, immortals, then colossi. You're pretty much, from the moment you build the robo, you're pretty much trying to build out of it as much as possible, sometimes with chrono boost. Stop proving me wrong, Classic. Well, not right now. There are always exceptions to every rule, but Source, just trust me, bro. But he's already got the prism. Not adding anything more on yet. Actually, interesting. So, I want to talk about one of the most often pointed out mistakes that is not a mistake from Protoss. It is Protoss banking up 500 1,000 minerals. Warp Gate exists, okay? So, Warp Gate with 8 gateways. You're warping in Zealots, that's 800 minerals. Stalkers, 1,200, and 400. So, seeing Protoss with over 1,000 minerals is almost... can be a mistake, but is often not. Just for those, I see those comments occasionally. Alright. Now, sometimes it definitely is. Sometimes you're getting distracted with micro. Especially if they're supply blocked, obviously. Let's make no mistake on that. But it's much more likely for Protoss to be banking up a lot of money, just simply because of how their production works. But enough about production and more about action. Clem caught a little off guard. There are Templar with Storm at the ready. Ghost coming out, but not ready yet. The Storm's on the mineral line. Just ripping through 7 SCVs. The Warp Prism in the main. Charge lots cleaned up, but the Storms will ward everything away. And already a second robotics facility, as well as a Robo Bay. How many Vikings? 0. That's not very many. EMP thrown out, though, hits the majority of the Templar. Storms. Clem wading through it. Clem definitely coming out in a... Templar. Don't mind me. I'm just... Nope, just sightseeing. I'll expect one of us in the wreckage. Nope. Templar just contemplating how it's been abandoned by the recall. That Templar, time for the revenge arc. The Templar has 1 kill. So, it's an interesting number for a Templar to have outright. Feels like it was a water balloon that did it. Now, Classic is taking not just a 4th, but a 5th base as Clem, working on his 4th command center. But Clem has built up the army. He's got 2-2 on the way. Yes, Classic knows, of course, the map is dark and full of Terrans. So he's lighting it up. The watchtower. He's got the spylons on the side. He's got observers over almost everything. He's keeping track of Clem's army, and he needs to, because the Terran army, when you're unprepared for it, can wipe out half your HP and all your energy with EMP, and the bio can clean up the rest with ease. Especially before the Colossi are a major threat. Right now, there's just 2 of them. He's doubling that count. Extended thermal lance is on the way. Mine's already there. And 5 more gates in production. Not like Clem is slouching right now. He's got plenty of production. He's maxed out. 13, going up to 20 gateways, give or take. 18 gates? I don't know. Gonna be banking up a lot of money for those warpins. Kind of like how Terrans bankroll those command centers in the later game in order to have scans and mules. So that way your supply is less invested in SCVs. This way you could just... What? So technically you could take down the destructible tower, destroy the watchtower, destroy the rocks, and then unlock the Rube gold base. But Classic is like, well, whatever. I'll just mine from some of it. He's gonna take pretty much every base on the map right as he takes a position outside the natural. 1 Colossus, Storm's warding away. The Warp Prism could be targeted. Isn't feedback on the Ghost. Takes out several. But the Warp Prism finally taken out. Some Archons in the fray. Colossi stepping around, so far not finding a ton of success. 24 SCVs dead, but it was the Storms that whittled down the majority of it. The Colossi helping thin out the army, but Clem loses a critical mass of his bio and a whole lot of his economy. He's still going to try to fight, but the medevacs are a little bit late until just finished the 2-2 upgrades. The Viking volleys are good. May take out the last Colossus. And now forced to turn around. Snipes out the Templar, but there's another one. Wards it away. Storm's a historical and effective counter to Vikings. But, Clem definitely taking the worst end of that fight. Classic destroying 6 ghosts, 2 siege tanks, the 24 SCVs. That's Classic having near perfect vision and picking his fights so well. He made it so... the watchtower keeps getting activated by the probes Viking. Clem EMPs the Nexus to make sure he can't be recalled on top of. And then he picks up and heads for the main. And the main base is quite a conundrum here. There are so many gateways, the sheer amount of infrastructure. Recalls back. Clem with a massive game. Are there any Templar? Just 1 in the fray here. No, 2. Energy recharge. Doesn't matter too much. Classic traps him in a prison of his own design. The gateway is effectively zoning Clem out of the base. He loses 4 or 5 of them. Still has 17, so that's plenty of production for Classic. The Storms in the corner. Not enough! The Storms wash over everything. The Ghosts, not enough. The Storms, more than enough. He finds the base at the watchtower. He finds another base in the corner. And Clem at only 170 supply. So far, unable to make a real dent in Classic's economy as he expanded so far and so wide that Clem is really struggling to nail him down. Just gateway units here for now. The +3/+2 gives an advantage, but the Vikings hit the deck and then realize the Colossi are something he needs to contend with. Chasing things down. Not quite enough energy for Storm. Settles for a feedback on the medevacs. More ghosts. Colossus surrounded by Vikings. But Clem is down 60 supply. And Classic may be turning this into an incredibly short series and in an unexpected direction. Clem with... There's nothing left. There's no advantages. There's no liberators. There's no huge amount of worker kills. There's no upgrades he can work with. GGWP. Classic takes game 3, and Clem on the ropes. Match point for the Korean powerhouse. Clem stormed into oblivion, and may be storming out of this series quickly. That's one of those games, like, what even went wrong? I guess, well, the very early game cannot be understated. It seems like we're in a certain state 10 minutes later that, but it all comes from that early game. More than any other matchup, especially the non-mirror matchups, but just losing the first medevac before getting any... Well, he got a probe kill, technically, because the probe... I love that the most. All right. The probe brought with the stalkers... Covered. We don't wait for anyone here. All right. You can simulate it by pausing, going to subscribe to RSL, and coming back if you like. But we do it live. I mean, give or take. But... that early game pressure. The technical exchange. Thing is, Clem is probably the most figured out player in the game. Clem has probably played the most professional games in the last year. Playing in every weekly tournament against pretty much everyone who competes because he's almost always in the finals. So that means he goes through many players. Much sometimes to the dismay of people watching this channel, like, why is it always Clem? Well, it's because Clem is in, by definition, sometimes replay packs. It's like Dark a couple years ago. Sometimes I get replay packs of tournaments where over half of the games are featuring Clem because mostly it's like the semifinals and finals. It's like of the last 2 weeklies, I have 20 replays and 14 of them are Clem versus someone. So statistically, if we're only getting like 1 in 4 matches as Clem, that's less than the amount of games I've received with Clem in them. It depends. It depends. Especially if non-mirror matchups. Because Clem is the only player in the world who doesn't play mirror matchups as well. Though that doesn't seem to be helping him here. I wouldn't be surprised. Well, if there was going to be a time, it'd be now. That Clem loads in as Protoss. Why does no one off-race his Zerg? But Clem turning it into a habit. No other player has embraced the same thing. I feel like it's partially his mechanical talent that allows him to play both Terran and Protoss at arguably the highest level. Though Classic is certainly teaching him some things right now. I would not be the least bit surprised to see the playstyle Classic is using, which is apparently interesting trade, show up in some of Clem's games in the near future. Because that's part of the advantage of playing 2 races to an extent, is being able to just straight up steal some of those. Hey, that's disrespectful. This runs right by. Wow, the sentry. But okay, see, you stop right there, criminal scum. That was the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen. And I've seen Clem rage against... the tickle beams of the sentry. They're straight up being ignored. I mean, no damage done, but Clem just walks and gets a full scout. Doesn't kill anything meaningful. He gets the first adept, right? That's it. Oh, a Reaper. Yeah, I thought so. Oh. Gets him. Knocks him out. The Phoenix chases it down, but hallucinated stalkers. But a fake, he forces the drop, which an interesting choice. I mean, seeing the stalkers forces the drop, so I guess that slows it down, but it's not, doesn't take long to load him back up. Clem going to find that. Ooh, he can hit the mineral line from that little corner there. Classic clearly doesn't want to let him do so. The tanks, just a little sidestep with the stalker to avoid the damage. And so far, Classic doing a great job of mitigating this sort of attack. Blink is almost completed. Clem loses the first siege tank. 3 rags back at home. Stalker's moving up siege tank. Sieging on the high ground. 1 second before Blink. We'll never see the light of day. Stalker take it out. And Classic bottled up on 2 base now. Usually you'd want to see a third base started by this point. But 3 more gates in production. He's just going to go up to 6 gates. He's going to meet the aggression with some aggression of his own. Templar Archives in production yet again. The Liberator headed for the main, picking off some of the Marines in the midfield. But he reacts to the Liberator. An awkward exchange, to say the least. Siege tanks in position. The Stalkers, now, this is an well, looks like the shield battery will be enough. Classic cutting off the reinforcements. Liberator taken out with the help of the shield battery and those Stalkers. And Classic just blunks into the mineral line. The boys are pulled off the line. Clem is coming back to defend. There's a siege tank on the high ground and the low. And Stalker's stuck in the middle with you. Target's down 1, 2 more. Gets the majority of them out of there. There's another Liberator. Classic not finding the decisive damage he was hoping for. And Clem still has most of his army intact. Liberator siege is up. So, Classic gonna fight the siege tanks, but the medevac getting a little bit close. Classic, we're playing ring around the bridges here again. Where's the medevac? Trying to help him avoid the shots, but ideally the medevac is the one taken out. There's an observer spotting for some of this. Still no third base from either side. Liberator will be taken down at the cost of 1 Stalker. 4 siege tanks now. As Stalker's cutting across the map. The tanks, he's actually aggressively moving forward with the bruised medevac. Here come the charge lots. Things getting more complicated. As Clem loses 2 tanks. Medevac taken down. He won't be able to save anymore. And a big win for Classic on the field as Clem overstayed his welcome. And we all know the Terrans aren't welcome at all. Boys are pulled off the line. And Clem his entire tournament here. There's, it's tough to break the high ground even without vision. Stim is not even done. Combat shield further off, +1 even further than that. But they're all on the way. Classic just now taking his 3rd Nexus. Both players going to have a 3rd base at about the same time. Of course, Clem going to have to float it over. Loses 1 SCV, a 2nd one on barracks 4 and 5. The scan, he spots the observer. Stims the Marines to chase it down, but it's not going to happen. He knows it's there. But Classic has been very slippery with the observers. A useful skill to have. Another one. 2 scans. Wait, okay. 2 scans. He does take it out. But 2 scans is quite costly. Clearly Clem trying to make sure Classic doesn't have perfect tabs on him the entire time. And so far, mostly not succeeding. Storm is done. Wading through more and more of it. Classic. The storm, so look at that beautiful spread from Clem. I can't believe it's not butter. But the Templar count is so high. Some charge lots loaded into the prism. Clem up 20 supply, but Storm can equalize that quickly. A Marine drop loaded up to help chase down the medevac. But the charge lot's more than enough to contend with it. Dropping in, dropping out. Shaking his Marines all about and +1. So far, enough. And he just guns down the charge lots. The warp prism gets out of there. Probably the more important priority. But more observers being sent around. Robo Bay is on the way. Ghosts in production. Clem maintaining a strong army supply, and with Ghosts on the field. Observer. There's only 1 Marine, as the Storm's thinning so much of this out. EMP can also detect. Whoa! Almost lost a Warp Prism with 2 Templar to a Widow Mine. Should be quite costly. Templar mildly inconveniences that mine. +1 armor on the way. The Storm on the bridge. Softens up a lot of the mines. Another one hits 1 mine. But the Widow Mine's definitely zoning things out. The choke points excruciating here for the Protoss to try to move through. But The storms will help open it up. Splits the Marines back. EMP a little bit late. More mines burrowing. But Clem arcs out the concave. Beautiful. The medevacs put to work. And Clem maintaining a solid position. Colossi sorely needed, though. As Clem clearly building the momentum. He has enough ghosts. 5 ghosts. 8 Templar. Picks up the medevacs. Picks up into the medevacs and is ready to drop the base. DJ Clem. But I believe they were scouted or at least anticipated. He has observers down the center, and process of elimination may result in the elimination of Clem. Medevac. Looking for something with the probe. Not quite going to spot it. And there's going to be... Oh, the storms on top of the ramp. Chasing more down. But Clem should be able to drop in uncontested. Classic just had no vision of this at all. And this is where the real damage will be done. Already losing 12 probes and potentially the Nexus. The storms not doing enough to cut into the momentum of the bio. Another storm brought up in the backline, but EMP lands. Widowmine does some damage to the Terrans as well. But the army getting strung out and Classic dipping heavily in supply. Clem opens up a 25 supply lead. And for the first time, I feel, throughout this series, doing real economic damage to Classic. At least critical damage. He did some with the Banshees in game number 2. But this is more meaningful. As right now, Classic, he was relying on his ability to refill the army to make up for his lack of power units, really, in the form of Colossi. But now he's down 12 workers against a 4-base Terran. He's going to have 2-1 at almost exactly the same time as Clem, so no upgrade advantage. Clem is already preemptively building Vikings and has plenty of Marauders on the ground as well. Investing in Ghost Cloak. +2 infantry weapons and armor. Those upgrades, as long as he can maintain parity, it comes down to the economy. If the upgrade advantage goes heavily to the Protoss, that's when you can no longer rely on those groups of bio units to be... Is that Colossus walled in? How? How's How? He had to pick it up with a warp prism. Or maybe it's just a real diva about it. I don't know. Either way, that is an impressive feat. Clem spreading out across the map. He's got plenty of ghosts. 5 Vikings, so not a critical mass so far, but that is a terrible spot to be in. EMPs don't quite hit the majority of the Templar. There's another Bioforce hitting the 4th base simultaneously. Widowmine connects at the front. There's nothing to defend the 4th back at home. Classic sends it into a base trade. A bit of a desperate start, but that's his best of few options here. Clem is coming back to defend. He's gonna lose the natural. He has some time to set up some pre-MPs. Knocks down a Colossus. Storms to ward away. The Marauders wade through. The Warp Prism is still intact for now, but gets targeted down. Storms washing over the front line, but it extends across so many fronts that he can't cover every angle. Some of the units are hitting the Orbital Command in Classic. Like 20 supply of charge lots, and Stalkers were not in the fight. And that means Clem is going to be able to whittle him down. He comes back. Reinforcements come streaming down the ramp. The Archons are taken down. 16 SCVs are slaughtered. But overall, I think Clem cleans it up. And Classic does not have the economy nor the army to fall back on. Clem, the command orbital is burning. Well, there you go. All right, just in time. Big job, All right, Billy. But here comes Clem, marching across the map. There's still Templar, but there's plenty of ghosts. There's still Colossi, but the Vikings are already overhead, and plenty of Marauders in order to mitigate it. There's Cloak on the ghosts. He just can auto-attack, potentially. Lines up the snipe. Near full energy. Templar is obliterated. The Colossi on the high ground. EMP is landing. The medevacs are nearly out of energy. After all these stims, Classic. Clem is leaning on 3-3. He's narrowed down the options. He knows that Classic doesn't have the economy. Clem is now on 5 bases. Sure, the main and natural are mined out, but that goes for both sides. And Clem, for the first time in this series, I think has a decisive advantage. Wow. Classic finally put in a difficult position that I don't know if he'll be able to get out of. He still has the tools in Colossi and Templar, but Clem is going to have +3 infantry weapons, which will put him ahead on the upgrades. And it's the economy, stupid. Alright. That matters the most here. Classic wasn't able, he didn't even kill that orbital at the natural. His army not in the fight. This army's 12 ghosts in the army. A very spooky composition. And Clem standing his ground, the Colossi, even the storm's not enough to drive him back. The Colossi will tumble. The Stalker's obliterated. And the Clempire strikes back. It's 3-1. Clem is on the board. Wow. He's still got it. Turns it around. A hard-fought battle. But Classic unable to get all those little advantages that he's been relying on throughout the series. Clearly preparing for what Clem has, but not able to shut it down. The siege tanks buying enough time. The army well controlled. I think Clem is finally adapting to the abundance of storm. I think that's probably the most important part. You can just expect storm to be done. By the time we get anywhere close to 3 bases, Classic will have storm. That's how it is. That's how it be. It's a science fact. Has the momentum shifted? I don't think he can be too unhappy with that as Classic. It was still a solid game. There were no clear mistakes. It's just Clem. Eventually, when you do that kind of revolving door medevac style, you have more supply. It's almost impossible for Protoss to have enough in the right place at the right time. There has to be some almost premonition, which Classic has shown, actually, throughout the series. He's prepared, he knows the options, and he knows Clem's tendencies. But mind games aren't always enough. A hard-fought battle so far. I think the longest game of the series there, at least to this point. Again, no SCV scout from Clem. Committed to the idea. I do think part of it was that's early in the series. It's a community map that there's not as much experience on, so something like a 2-gate, you can pull that one off. All right, but I think it was perfectly timed. And Classic has a lot of leeway here. He can go for another 2-gate. He can try a Stargate build. And he can stick with his guns, which have worked perfectly well so far against Clem's more literal ones. So, being up 3-0 and then 3... I mean, a lot can go wrong, and Classic can still take this one home. But Clem is definitely a threat for the reverse sweep as well. I think there is no player more suited to doing so. Clem, one of those players, like, when he warms up, sometimes just looks unbeatable, looks perfect, looks impossible. The source of so many balance complaints, and then he switches to Protoss and is the source of so many balance complaints. He just has that talent. Meanwhile, who's hunting who? The Reapers. They find the Adept. Adept finds the Reapers. Through the trees. Blocks vision for a moment. May cancel. Yeah, cancels the shade just to cover. Adept shade away. Reaper wall. Spots it in the main. The pre-shade in order to get some damage and then minimize. But technically, Reapers and Hellions can outrange effectively the Adepts. Robo on the way. The most stock standard of Blink. No Stargate. It's going to be blinking. I think every single game has ended up as Blink being the first bit of tech. And Clem leaning on the Widow Mine drops a lot. There is a bit of a question mark over all this because this tournament happening less than a month before the World Cup. So I don't think either player willing to share crazy new strategies or styles. Yes, there's a lot of prestige and prize on the line, but the World Cup in order of magnitude more. Clem, obviously, with a lot on the line there, too. So, Widowmine drop. So, both players... Sentry getting some revenge. Sentry is getting pushed around this whole series. Though, possibly the most important unit, with Guardian Shield, reducing all range damage by 2, even if they're within the Guardian Shield, by the way. It's a huge deal, but I digress. So yeah, with the World Cup in less than a month, I'm not surprised so far both players. You might be like, what about that 2-gate? That is not in the official map pool. So even though it's one of those builds that might be a threat, you know, honestly, from a more meta perspective, even outside of this series, if you were going to do a super cheese that's map dependent, of course you do it on the map that you aren't likely to be playing the same player again in the World Championship next month. So, even from that perspective, I think Classic a bit of a strategic genius. But, or Prism. 4 Stalkers with Blink. So, the most bare bones pressure. The Raven. Nevermore, says Classic. Chasing down with the medevac. Killing the Raven was actually huge. The Raven is a huge investment early. 150, and requires... I think he saw the Widow Mine there. And requires that tech lab, delaying everything else, knocking out the Raven. It didn't even get any. So, Stim's done in 6 seconds. But the medevac... Oh, this is awkward. Nobody expected to be here. The Warp Prism. Stim just finished. The medevac take it out. He gets away with it. Don't come back. Are you crazy? Stim means the Warp Prism could die. He is way overstaying. Classic. Getting so much for 4 Stalkers and a Prism. Wow. He is complete. He's so greedy. He should not... He gets 3 Stalkers out? What? Classic playing with... right on the edge here. But he manages to get so much done. He loses 1 Stalker, the medevac, 5 Marines, as well as that Raven earlier. And he gets out of it with the Warp Prism and the Stalkers. That's the key point. Even if it's badly bruised, having that Warp Prism to help maneuver the Templar... Oh yeah, Storm, of course. Is done. It's kind of implied. Alright, Classic's here. 3 probes dead. The Reaper Hellion tried to come back in. 3 probes in total. Is that a slow warp? Does not have a super pylon near the Nexus or a warp gate there to quicken the warp in like is required. Or a Warp Prism, I guess. Rarely do you see that because most players by default choose the right pylons to warp in. But Clem, ready to lay on the pressure from both sides. Classic didn't have vision. And, oh, the Storm hits home. Softens up the majority of the army on the right flank. Another Storm. We see the remnants of several Marines. Widowmon taken out. Warp Prism headed out again. Slips through. The Warp Prism who lived. That's how you know it's not hero. Our daily hero shade. Well, he's not here, is he? Warp Prism spots the Widowmine on the edge. And then realizes maybe he'll drop some off at the 3rd. Stalkers intercepted. Goes straight into the Widowmine, though. Not ideal. Meanwhile, back at home. The charge lot slicing through some of the SCVs. Clem actually scrambling back to defend. There's a couple Widowmines down the center. Ghosts will help take out the charge lots. But things getting real dicey and real slicey right now for Clem. As that Warp Prism still lives. Why won't you die? The army Storm gonna hit more Zealots than Marauders. Able to stim away just in time, Clem. Shaving off the edges. Not again. The Warp Prism in phasing mode. The Templar coming through. But the Ghost EMP lands. But there's still a couple Storms ready. Actually, a full energy Templar. Classic. And the Prism who lived. It just won't die. Trying to move forward. The pre-MP is attempted. Doesn't even hit the Prism. But the actual army is thinning out very quickly. Another Storm! But the Ghosts wade right through it. He might be able to save an Archon. He does so at literally the last possible second. But Classic is cleaned up. The Prism lives and almost nothing else does. Everything that lived is in the Prism. How bad did that go? Clem destroyed 1,500 more minerals and 700 more gas. He lost a lot of Marines and Mons and some SCVs, but he killed 24 charge lots, an Archon, 3 Templar. So, Classic. I think missing the forest for the trees there a bit. Landing some storms, but Clem had an army spread around, and Ghosts have enough HP to survive storms with some left over. So they can wade into it, kill or EMP the Templar, and get, well, thank you for the demonstration, though it does interrupt the stun. EMPs. Not like this. The Prism, the Archon survives taking a sip of the shield battery. Classic. Down 40 supply. A desperate defense, but the EMPs land, and the Whittle Mines will cover the retreat. And he can't close the distance with the charge lots, but the Marines and Marauders are more than happy to. Gutting down the charge lots one by one, and not nearly enough of them closing in. The Prism lived, but Classic may not. 2-1 upgrades now completed. That might be enough to help turn the tide. The Medivacs are nearly out of energy. The Prism! The shield stripped away, but the HP is still intact. The Vikings coming up to deal with this. He drags some of the Archons back. Clem up 40 supply. He's got a 4th base on the way, but Classic somehow maintained his 4th Nexus. He refuses to die. Clem is taking great fights across the board, but the war is still in doubt. Clem just topples a Colossus the moment it pops from the Robo. He has 2 of them. More feedbacks, more Ghosts coming up, though. How many Templar left? A single Templar. The storms have to be cataclysmic. I don't think it even has energy at this point. Energy recharge would certainly help with that. Classic 72 probes. He has enough economy. The Warp Prism almost dying to the random Whittle Mine, which I think would be the appropriate end. I believe Clem actually spotted it with that mine, even if he wasn't able to take it out. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. All right. The Prism finally dies. A decisive death to about half of Clem's army. Finally, the Vikings join in the fray. But Classic has held on by the skin of his non-existent Protoss teeth. He's kept 4 bases, double Robo production. Did Clem shoot his own Whittle Mine? Just to be sure, no traitors in our midst. Takes down an observer. Clem is maxed out. Classic far from it. 4th base taken at the 6 o'clock. Another command center on the way. Fusion Core is in production for Clem. Access to those late game upgrades. And technically battle cruisers, but let's be honest with ourselves. Classic has slowed the game down. Exactly what he needs to put together a response to what Clem has across the field. Another War Prism, the successor. Something to reposition, potentially save the Colossi in the fight as well. 6 more gateways. Clem's gonna have 2-2 upgrades. Classic's already there. Actually, +3 Protoss ground weapons now completed. Clem adding on Ghost Cloak as well. As ship weapons level 1. Knocks out a attempted 5th base. Scans for another base and potentially the army. Classic has the army. He's maxed out. He doesn't have anything in the bank. And he doesn't have any other bases to fall back to. So it's a fragile, it's a brittle position for Classic. But he certainly dragged himself back into it with some very efficient control. The charge lots will bring Clem back across the map. Widow mines being cleaned up. There's a couple more at the side. Well, that's just rude. Even blocking the base with it. The charge lots chase down, but the stalkers covering the retreat. Picks off a ghost. The EMPs wash across them. But he needs the army together to deal with this. 5 liberators at a time. Advanced ballistics on the way for their range. 3 starports working. He doesn't have drilling claws. Oh my. But wait, there's more. The Widow Mine's delaying another Nexus. The Ghost will cloak. He's scanning for him. Oh no! Oh no! It's an absolute disaster! The extinction of the Templar, forced into Archons, stripped of shields, and unceremoniously eliminated. A few Templar on the left flank. They try a storm, but just like that, over 1,000 Vespene gas has been removed from the field. The greatest threat to Clem's critical mass of Terran. The storms have been mitigated. The Vikings over the top knock down a Colossus before the fight starts. The Liberators a Venn diagram of freedom around the corner. The Marines and Marauders are tearing through the gateway units that are left over. And that's all that's left over. There's nothing left for Classic. Clem finds a decisive victory on the field, capitalizes quickly, and I think we're going to game number 6. The Archons easily picked off by the Liberators. Another War Prism knocked down by the Vikings. And Clem, with extreme vengeance, is able to take that fight he was looking for. The best way to win a fight is before it even starts. In the EMPs, for once Classic had all his Templar congregated on the field. For once Classic had everything exposed. And Clem took full advantage. Clearly feeling the stress there. Classic struggles to bring it together. He's gonna fight it out to the bitter end. Clem definitely someone who could get tilted if Classic holds on for too long. But he won't be holding on much longer. The Liberator's covering everything. Clem takes another. That's 2 in a row. Halfway there. Well. Clem striking back twice in a row. Classic. Well, the game's slowing down some, but Clem starting to carve out those advantages. It's not a guarantee that you can capitalize. You still need to deal with the Templar, to deal with the Colossi. But Clem caught a lucky... Well, he forced a lucky break. Let's not pretend like Classic would have made that mistake if Clem wasn't continually applying the pressure. Remember the Widow Mines? The Widow Mines continually distracting Classic, as is most of their main purpose in life, are what kept Classic from looking that direction. I think those 2 Widow Mines just stuck in the corner, killing multiple probes and delaying the base is what Classic was dealing with, as his Templar were wiped out. And until that point, victory was far from guaranteed for Clem, but it turned it into an inevitability. And now, we're still on match point for Classic. That's how it works. But Clem has all the momentum. Yeah, another no scout early game. Clem not going for 2 gas, but also not sending out an SCV. Giving us plenty of time to still beg for likes and subscribes. What is that? I got like a Master Chief? Of course not. Never. Grandmaster Leader, of course. No copyright infringement here. The probe getting double teamed by the SCVs. And not in a fun way. Delaying the command. Somebody slaps it down, pulls it out of his magical backpack. Probe makes it out. It's going to be Marine first. Clem falling back to a much more economic style. He's been leaning on the double gas for quite a while, but here on Tokamak, bunker is on the way. Twilight Council, yet again. Classic doesn't seem to be interested in the Stargate at all. We saw... I don't know if we've seen a Stargate at all. Eventually, if the game goes on against ranged liberators long enough, a Stargate is required. But we haven't quite made it there. Even the late games have not been drawn out, as these two very quick to take advantage of advantage. Bulwark coming together just to make sure any Blink Stalkers coming in are going to have a real tough time of ever getting out.
What a save!
Just pops the SCV onto the other side. And takes down the Adept. He trades the Adept for an SCV. Was it worth it? I mean, emotional damage against Terrans, very easy to inflict and does have quite a multiplier. But it's likely he would have gotten the scout anyway. The Adept probably wasn't going to get out, let's be honest here, so. And he gets a full scout. Classic, gonna be, wow. He realizes that Clem is going for the economic play, and he takes a 330 third base. That is about as quick as you can ever get it while still going for the requisite 2 gates back at home. Classic clearly figuring out what Clem is doing and playing exactly against it. I mean, that's what scouting's for, but the detail, since we're seeing almost the exact same things, it's the order and the timing in the production tab that it clearly matters. And that has a reverberating effect throughout the game, as we've seen time and time again. Quite a series between these two, though. Clearly evenly matched at this point. But Clem taking the better end so far. At least the last couple games. Obviously the score is not there. I immediately had to be like, wait a second. How does math work? We go up by 1 every game. Alright, that's what we... No, wait, that's the like count. And subscribe. Ideally, more than 1. Hopefully. Moving on. Blink completed. But that doesn't mean he can see the drop coming in. The medevac in the main base. He's got the wall off here to funnel units. He blinks over the top, though, and the Widow Mine slams into a Stalker. Splash damage across the board. Takes out the medevac. The Sentry will eventually tickle down the Widow Mine, but the Marine's getting real damage done. Might be able to pick off another Stalker in a moment. Plunks forward. Just murders the Marines. 3 probes dead. 1 Stalker. And he lost the medevac. I think Classic got the better end of that exchange. Clearing it up quickly is usually more important than clearing it up cleanly. It's better to lose a Stalker or 2 and deal with it in 10 seconds than be waiting for 30. But the Banshee, uncontested. Okay, 1 Stalker, but it cloaks. And the very quick Banshee follow-up. There is an observer somewhere making its way out, but the probes? You think he's still following us? He's definitely still following us. Terrans hold grudges for decades. No, I think he's... Sorry, I blacked out for... 2 probes dead. Banshees will clean things up. And Clem, the full bulwark in the main, though. Classic seems to have no intentions of testing it at the moment. More gates. Charge on the way. Templar Archives, of course. Alright, the triple threat for Clem. Stim combat, shield +1. Medevacs out the way to enable the dudes with their drugs, guns, and a hatred of aliens they don't understand. They claim they're illegal, of course, and they're the ones making the rules somehow. The Protoss say nothing, as they do not have mouths. I have no mouth, but I must balance one. Psionic Storm has begun, but the Banshees are slipping in. There's an observer ready. The army actually snuck out. I'm not sure if Classic realized the army moved out. The map is dark, as always, and potentially full of Terrans, and there's no vision. He's building cannons to help defend against the Banshees, but they cannot defend against siege tanks at the front. This... Wow. I wonder if Classic's starting to get a little suspicious here. As this army's going to show up, that scan is incredibly suspicious. Storm is not done. Charge is complete, but there's not enough units here to defend. Storm closing in, but he's just going to rip down a couple gateways. In an awkward position, trying to funnel at the front. Storm in 6 seconds. But even with Storm, this is a lot of damage being dealt. Classic down 20 supply. One Storm going to try to soften things up. Another one to clean up a bit of the bile, but 3 gateways dead. Classic still has 5 of them. But rare you see so much of the production taken down so quickly. He's gonna retreat. Classic moving to intercept. The reinforcements are coming across the other side, but here's the Warp Prism. The charge lots on top of the siege tanks. Storm an existential threat, but he's forced around the corner. Picks off the tanks. 2 of the medevacs badly bruised. I think he spotted the army. Not quite coming across the right side. Clem swings in again. And Storm so warded away, but not quite enough. Stalkers in position. A lot of charge lots behind. Clem not moving in with the rest of the army. Cloaked Banshees are slipping in between the lines. And there is a cannon at the natural, but cannons don't move very fast. So the Banshees can easily outposition it. Picks off a couple more probes. Some great Banshee micro and 7 more probes. Deja vu. We've just been in this place before. Banshee's getting an undue amount of damage done. And he could have sworn he had an observer. Blinks forward, realizes he doesn't have an observer, and the entire army, the charge lots, the most obvious select all army key usage since Hero has played ever. But the charge lots and the Warp Prism, and telegraphing the fact that the entire army is back at home, and Clem has some time to build up his defenses. An armory, as well as a second engineering bay, is on the way. The Banshees do more than enough damage to justify their presence. 68 to 61 workers in favor of the Frenchmen. And now Classic. I think he's going to try to turn this army into at least some map control, because the best defense may very well be a good offense. If he lets Clem continue to dictate the pace of the game, well, he may outrun him in the end. The Warp Prism slips by the Viking. The Viking, not enough damage to kill it in the main. He's going to go for a Warp-in. A full suite of charge lots. The Warp Prism will be taken down, but the charge lot's already infesting the main. The attack at the front, the EMP's not quite hitting the Templar, but everything else. The boys are pulled. More EMPs on the charge lots. 1 ghost will be eviscerated, but the charge lot's cleaned up and the army is driven back. Clem opens up a 30 supply lead. Clem. He's got 2-1 on the way. Almost pretty far behind Classic's +2 attack. Extended thermal lance for Classic. 2 Colossi in production. Double Robo. He's shored up the worker count up to 70. There's a 4th command center ready for Clem. Starport. 2nd starport going to be completing. 3 more racks. Full production. About the most even, I think, we've been going into the later game, where you have your full suite of splash damage and 200 supply. Clem going to have a bit of an army supply advantage. He's already got ghosts on the field. He's got those medevacs in a sneaky positioning, just setting up for a potential flank. But Classic does have Colossi, as well as an upgrade advantage. And of course, the Templar, his trademark here. The drop, almost 40 supply, maybe more, with those medevacs. Not part of the army. Templar pre-spreading, does not want to get caught in the EMPs again. That was an absolute disaster. Observers knocked down. This Clem has to know some about this army. There's a sensor tower. Fusion core is on the way yet again for Clem. Obviously. But the bio storms across everything. He runs into the fight and tries to run out immediately. Picks up into the main. Clem hitting the other side simultaneously. But energy recharge. He whips out another couple storms, and the bio evaporates underneath it. Meanwhile, another set of storms softens up autumn colors across the board, and Clem is swept away from the main and pushed back from the fourth. Hey, I'm leaving. Hey, this is very rude. One of the Marauders did not quite survive, making it, well, not making it special, but just making it dramatic. Classic deflects the attack on both fronts, takes back map control as Medevac's desperately trying to heal. Most of his Medevac's already bruised, the Ghosts half dead, the Vikings softened up as well. But Classic trying to come up to a precarious position on the high ground. The Rock's going to be taken down, ever the Archaeologist. Now War Prism, the focal point here, incinerates the front line. The majority of the bio not quite in position to defend. The Ghost out in front hit most of the Templar. There's still Guardian Shield. He didn't have the detection for the Ghost at the right moment, and the EMPs wash across the board. A hallucinated Colossus absorbs a few hits. A great spot decision there from Classic, but he's going to be losing the Colossi and maybe the Prism. Prism knocked down easily. 2 Colossi left. Still a pretty difficult choke point here for Clem, coming through the alleys of fire that his own command centers have created. Clem, the EMPs definitely turning the tide, though. He wasn't able to capitalize and outright kill the army, but without the EMPs on the Templar, he may have been caught in a devastating position that maybe he couldn't break his way out of. But now the Medevacs have been given time to heal. Did he get Caduceus Reactor? No. But he does have advanced ballistics on those Liberators, which is certainly going to make things complicated for Classic, as there are definitely positions that Stalkers literally cannot hit. Not sure about that one, but Classic expanding to the top left corner as well. I feel like that's just for quick warp-ins. But Caduceus Reactor now on the way. Double Medevac energy regen. The Liberator can be hit, but only barely. A Stargate begins immediately. Good on Classic for recognizing the threat that these Liberators can pose. An existential one. EMPs on so many of the Templar, but a lot of the Ghosts are going to be taken out as well. The army, still quite a death ball out of Classic. The Liberator helping his own things out. Clem. Ooh, sensor tower taken down, but the Archon merging in an unfortunate location. Classic with a lot of army supply brought to bear. There's still a few Templar, a couple storms ready. Repositioning the Liberators, carves through, he's going for it, the Colossi. Firing on the army, and the army forced back by the storms. Colossi incinerating the front line. Liberators have been taken down, and Clem is down 50 supply. Colossi with an awkward angle to engage. The bio army on the left side going to hold against the charge lots, but still a couple Colossi. Yanks one back into the Prism, and the Prism is untouched throughout all this. He can warp in another round potentially, using it as the focal point. Clem down 30 supply. Another couple Liberators coming up. Blinks the Stalkers in. Charge lots on the third base. Another warp and could potentially seal the deal. 27 SCVs. Supply plummets. 100 down, and Classic against the World Champion, I think, may pull off one of the biggest upsets of the year. Not a clean sweep. Clem struck back with some strong games, but Classic showing a complete command. GG, well done. Classic will be your RSL Season 1 champion. What a decisive series. Classic proving that he's right now arguably the best Protoss player in the world. He has beaten the best opponents. He has carved his way through, really solidified his style, and despite being over a decade older than Clem, he's taken him to school. Which, you know, that actually makes sense. I didn't think about that analogy beforehand, but I don't think about any of them beforehand. All I think about is supporting the RSL, as well as smashing that like button. and subscribing. And I certainly hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Congratulations to the Chintas for cutting through yet another top-tier opponent and claiming a victory. And I'm looking very forward to the World Cup. But if you got the means of motivation, be awesome to check out Patreon, YouTube membership. But again, I hear liking and subscribing is still free, at least for now. So thank you for watching. Certainly hope you enjoyed. Thank you to our Mule Tier patrons, Big Jiggy, Devin, Door, Kate, Mario, Random Guy, and Suit for bringing in the extra minerals. And I hope to see you all next time. I hope I made your day a little bit better. Good luck. Have fun. Thank you for watching. Stay chill.